This is the fourth time the Grand National Series has visited this racetrack. A repaving job done a few years back. A little bit of patching work, as you saw in our opening, has been done. Let's take a look at the starting field for today's Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Chuck Bown is third pole position of the season with Kenny Wallace in his best qualifying effort of 1991 in the front row. Then it's Robert Presley, the pole winner at the Lanier Speedway, and Dave Rezendes from Masonic, Massachusetts. Row number 3 in his best qualifying effort, a rookie, Richard Lassiter from Little Rock, Arkansas, and the South Boston winner, Jeff Burton. Starting in the fourth row, as you see, Butch Miller in an unfamiliar number, car number 37, and Jeff Gordon, the current rookie points leader. In row number 5, it's Troy Beebe from Modesto, California, a rookie, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina's Ed Barrier.
In row number 6 on the inside from Mount Clemens, Michigan, Tracy Leslie. Beside him, our only two-time winner among the Busch Grand National Series regulars, Jimmy Hensley. In row number 7 on the inside, South Carolina native Robert Powell. Beside him, Alabama native Steve Grissom. In row number 8 on the inside, in the 15th starting position, that is going to be Tom Peck of McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania, currently 4th in the standings. The man currently lying 5th, Joe Nemechek, starts to his right. In row number 9 from Chicago, Illinois, Bobby Dotter. And beside him, another South Carolina driver, Eddie Goodson. And in row number 10 on the inside, it's Jeff Green. Beside him, Hal Goodson.
Alabama native Mike Oliver will start in the 21st position. Alongside of him will be Todd Bodine, driving an unfamiliar color, but the same number as usual, 34. Starting in row number 12, it's Bobby Labonte, the Grand National points leader, and Ward Burton, who took over the A.G. Dillard ride. We'll explain more about that. If you're following the sport, you know that happened a race or two ago. Row number 13, Tommy Houston, who runs well here, and rookie Cecil Eunice. In the 14th row, it's Kenny Gregg from the North Carolina area, runs at Hickory Speedway often, and Frank Baumgartner. Row number 15, Curtis Markham in the 75 car, his first ride in that, and Ed Ferree. And then the provisional starters in this afternoon's race, David Green and Elton Sawyer, in a car that was occupied at this race last year by his wife, Patty Moise, another story that we will develop. The pace car is off the track. The field comes up to speed, and we're underway in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. The field does a nice job of sorting itself out early as they come up to speed. Temperature about 90 degrees. Chuck Bown, your race leader, with Kenny Wallace in the 36 car second, followed by Robert Presley. Richard Lassiter doing a nice job of holding the 4th spot over Dave Rezendes in the number 79.
2 out of the 3 times that Chuck Bown won pole positions this year, he did not lead even a single lap. And of course, last week at Hickory, he had the shifter brake right at the green flag, so he's off to a much better start than he had last week, and certainly he's had on 2 other occasions when he's won pole positions during this 1991 campaign.
Now, today's race, because of the addition of 50 extra laps, NASCAR has waived the tire penalty for changing tires under yellow. What that means very simply is that under a caution flag, should one exist here today, the drivers will be allowed to come onto pit road and change one right front tire, one right rear tire, one left front tire, one left rear tire, at any portion throughout the race without a penalty. Normally the short track rules call for a 2-lap penalty if you change any tires under caution.
Good battle in the back of the pack for the 6th position, as you see Chuck Bown with about a 3-car length lead over Kenny Wallace. Back there moments ago, we saw the number 1 car and the number 33 car, that's Ed Barrier and Jeff Gordon getting into it. There at the bottom of the screen, Jeff Burton now goes to work on Richard Lassiter.
And that 1 car, the 4 Carolina Ford dealers machine, is Jeff Gordon, the rookie points leader. Now there is Richard Lassiter up the racetrack as we have a smoker down the front stretch. That's Kenny Gregg. He stays down at the bottom of the track. A lot of smoke, but no caution as of yet.
He must have hit something. You see some damage to the front of that number 23, Kenny Gregg of Hickory, North Carolina. His day will come to an end very soon.
We got trouble down in turn 4. There's a car number 51. That's Goodson, has come off the race, spun off the racetrack into the wall, and there he is.
Eddie Goodson of Darlington, South Carolina. Severe damage to the left front of that race car. See the sheet metal dragging along the racetrack.
And he's trying to keep himself on the lead lap coming back to the start-finish line under Grand National rules, of course. Gentlemen's agreement, the minute the yellow comes out, the field slows down immediately. And we'll be back with more action from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, just underway in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Chuck Bown, your early race leader. Stay with us. We've just gone back on the green here at the Myrtle Beach Speedway with Chuck Bown continuing as our race leader. The front 5 cars have broken away. That's Chuck Bown, Kenny Wallace, Robert Presley, Jeff Burton, and Dave Resendiz have opened up a 12-car length advantage over the 6th-place car, and that's a pack led by Richard Lassiter. During that last caution, Tommy Houston came on to pit road. He is still on pit road. Here's a driver who runs all here at this track, but is having early problems. He goes 2 laps down. Also stopping on pit road moments ago is a 37 car. That's the one that Butch Miller has climbed into. So early problems for that Michigan driver. Let's check pit side with Bill Hennessy.
Well, we've got Eddie Goodson here. Eddie, you're the first car to suffer some damage in the race. What happened to the 51 car here at your home track?
The car turned sideways. I don't know who he was. I tried to miss him, got in the grass, trying to keep him, he hit the wall.
Eddie Goodson, who races here at Myrtle Beach Speedway, had a short-lived day. 2 other cars are on the pit lane, the 6th of Tommy Houston and also the Jeff Green car. Both of those cars apparently are going behind the wall.
And we have a good battle up front now as Kenny Wallace and Chuck Bown have pulled to a 10-car length advantage over a good 3rd-place battle, which is developed between Presley and Jeff Burton. Kenny Wallace qualified outside front row. Your pole sitter, Chuck Bown. So 1-2 are running 1-2 on the speedway at this moment. Chuck Bown, as we saw in that Haviland Racing Report, Mark, has had so much difficult times this season. You really have to start wondering if this fellow just isn't snake bit after winning the championship. And there's a 31 car of Steve Grissom, who also had some problems earlier today.
He is another driver that is snake bit. He won 4 races last year, comes into this race without having won so far in 1991. And just before the race, they had an engine problem. And just 20 minutes before this race fired up, they fired up the engine in the backup motor for that Roddenberry's Oldsmobile. And of course, anytime you do that, Glenn Jarrett, that's a crapshoot. You just don't have any laps on the engine. You just don't know what you've got, and you don't know if you have an oil line loose. You're going to have other types of problems.
Well, absolutely, Mark. There's always a chance there will be some kind of problem on the car. You see him making his way around the racetrack right now, but there's always that doubt, that unknown, that fear that they might have left something loose. So we'll have to keep an eye on Grissom.
Now we've got trouble on the speedway up in turns 3 and 4. The 5-car
Robert Powell, Moncks Corner, South Carolina, one of the drivers that spends a lot of time here at Myrtle Beach. That's the Innkeeper Pontiac.
Well, you see he's got a cut right rear tire, and he did something there that NASCAR is not going to like very much. He cut the tire, pulled the car up on the outside of the racetrack, and stopped it so that they would have to throw a caution so he could come in and change this tire under a caution period. I'll guarantee you the NASCAR official is going to have something to say to him.
Well, there's one standing right in front of his car right now. If our shot would open up just a little bit, he's standing there, and doesn't look like he's about to move. You see his hands there in the right part of the screen going, no, you'll stay right there for just a little while.
Robert Powell is one of the more accomplished short tracks drivers in the country, the 1986 Winston Racing Series national champion. So it's a young man who knows how to drive on the bull rings. As you can see here, no other problems on the track. There is no debris to pick up, no safety vehicles out there, so we'll be going green again in just 1 lap.
Butch Miller, we've just got a report that he also had a cut tire. He is back out onto the racetrack in that borrowed race car. Butch Miller, who won a race earlier this year in Hickory, looked like things were really heading towards a super campaign. And we see now that Robert Powell is being held by NASCAR officials who thought he brought out that yellow flag when he really didn't have to.
Well, he lost the lap in the pits anyway, but they were going to hold him and penalize him, I believe, because they have held him, made him go to the back of the field.
And this rule was really precipitated in a Winston Cup race in North Wilkesboro a few years back when Terry Labonte had a tire go down, pulled up the speedway out of the harm's way, got the yellow out, then stormed back to the start-finish line. Turned out Terry Labonte ended up winning the race. As we go back to green flag action on lap number 20, Chuck Bown continues as the leader. On the outside, that's the 37 car of Butch Miller.
A little bit of a break for some of the other drivers behind Chuck Bown and Kenny Wallace as far as that caution flag was concerned, because they had really moved away from Robert Presley and Jeff Burton. There is Presley in car number 59. Just behind him in the Chevrolet is Jeff Burton, car number 99. They were battling for the 3rd position, but Bown and Wallace had waved goodbye to them and the rest of the field. So that yellow flag, very welcome news for those drivers.
And in watching that battle for 3rd, it looks like Burton really has a better car. He's gotten his fender underneath Presley several times, just hasn't been able to take the position away. There you see them there at the top of the screen as they have now dispatched the Butch Miller car further back. This is a battle for 5th on the track now as a black flag is being shown once again to Robert Powell. He'll be called to the pits once again. 79 Dave Resendiz, he qualified in the 4th position, has slid back through the pack, but marching through the field nicely is last week's Hickory winner, Jimmy Hensley, who's looking to the outside, but you got to work your way around traffic and you run out of speedway real quick.
I tell you what, he just powered up around Steve Grissom, and Grissom is running pretty strong as you see the Kenny Gregg car being worked on in the garage area. Richard Lassiter there bottling up some cars in the back of the pack. Tracy Leslie there along with Troy Beebe, Joe Nemechek, Jeff Gordon, Bobby Dotter, and Tom Peck.
A number of rookies involved in that battle right there too. All 3 of those drivers in the head of that particular pack are rookies, so the more veteran drivers behind are careful. But look at that battle for 3rd. It's still a good one on the speedway.
It certainly is. Jeff Burton's putting a lot of pressure on Robert Presley. In fact, I think Robert may be holding Jeff up a little bit right now. Earlier in practice, I thought Robert was one of the quickest cars, but Burton in that 99 car really putting the pressure on him. I think if he can get around Presley, he'll make a move for the lead.
Well, we noticed something. They only had a half-hour practice session a little bit earlier this afternoon, and Presley closed up right on the back of Jimmy Hensley and gave him a kind of a tap you'd expect to see in a race. And Glenn, you talked with him about that right after that.
Yeah, I asked Robert about that move. You don't hardly see that in practice very often, but he said it was just a mistake. Said Jimmy backed out of the gas a little earlier going into 3, and Robert got in a little hot and tapped him, but it was just one of those things. No damage caused.
Word from the garage area, Jeff Green, the rookie from Owensboro, Kentucky, has dropped the valve, and he is going to now be parked on the sidelines permanently this afternoon.
A tough break for one of the 2 racing Green brothers. David Green is the other brother of that family from Owensboro, Kentucky. He's got problems as now Kenny Wallace takes a look underneath, but thinks better of it this time by as Chuck Bown slams the door. But Kenny Wallace wants to take his turn up front. He needs all the points he can get at this juncture of the season, sitting 3rd in the Grand National standings.
He certainly can. And before the race, and talking with him, I was talking with him, said, what do you expect today? And he said, I know I can run with Bown. I know that much. Can I pass him? Can I beat him? That's the question I really don't know right now as we are nearing now lap number 29 here in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Chuck Bown is leading. Kenny Wallace is currently 2nd. Robert Presley continues to hold on to 3rd. Behind him, Jeff Burton will be back with more from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Portland, Oregon native Chuck Bown has led all 35. Now make that 36 laps of the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. He's got a long way to go before he can put this one in the victory column. This telecast of the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250 is produced under broadcast rights granted by Myrtle Beach Speedway and is intended for the private use of our audience. Any retransmission or reuse of the pictures, accounts, or descriptions of this event without the expressed written consent of the Nashville Network and Southeastern Communications Group Incorporated is prohibited.
Kenny Wallace got a good bite coming out of turn 4. Got underneath Bown. He grabs the lead, slides up the racetrack. Here comes Bown battling right back. Glenn, we were noticing it seemed like Chuck Bown was better down in turns 1 and 2, and Kenny Wallace much stronger in 3 and 4, and he made it pay off with a pass for the lead.
Well, he did, Mark, but there's a little bit of difference in the configuration of the racetrack between turns 1 and 2 and turns 3 and 4. Chuck's car seems to be having a little bit of a push. He can't seem to turn the car right in the middle of the corner, and the car of Kenny Wallace seems to be working flawlessly right now. And once Chuck went in that corner, went a little high, Kenny just dove right in and drove away. Also, while we were waiting for break there, Jeff Burton in the car number 99 did take 3rd place away from Robert Presley.
And not only did he take 3rd place away, he is closing in on the lead too.
20.65 seconds. The leaders are running now, Glenn. The pole was won with a 19.8. I'm surprised we haven't fallen off a little bit more. That's still a pretty good pace.
It's a real good pace considering how hot it is right now. It was a little cooler yesterday when they qualified. It was later in the day. It's extremely hot on the racetrack right now. And for them to be running within a second of what they qualified at is somewhat amazing.
And our race leader is moving in on the Jeff Gordon machine, the 1 car, who had qualified 8th but has been steadily backpedaling, and there he goes, a lap down. Jeff Gordon, an outstanding rookie from Pittsburgh, Indiana, is having all sorts of problems and now presents a roadblock to Chuck Bown.
Tells you how tough this business is and how up and down it could be. Last week a runner-up finish at Hickory, and then comes back this week at Myrtle Beach and really gets hammered and down a lap before this race is even 50 laps over.
And look at that Jeff Burton machine closing in on the back of Chuck Bown. Now he is quickly reeling him in as Kenny Wallace is now pulling off to a little bit of a margin. A driver who's had a lot of really bad racing luck here ever since really Hickory when he had some lead come up and rupture an oil line. Since then he just can't seem to get a break on the racetrack. There's Burton looking underneath in the 99 car, Chuck Bown in the 63 machine. defending Grand National champion, a one-race winner this year at Nazareth seen here on TNN, and the South Boston winner, also a race, is also right there in the fray. Let's check trackside with Bill Hennessy.
From the back of his car, it looks like you've been sidelined, Tracy.
Well, we just blew a motor in the Detroit gasket. Motor was running good. You know, this was the best run we had of the year as far as qualifying, and I was really hoping for a good finish here, but I guess that's up in smoke.
Well, you can tell Tracy Leslie a bit disappointed, but he's headed for the beach now.
Well, there's no question that the fastest machine in the Speedway, and a man who's going to have a lot more laps before he can head back out into the sun, is Jeff Burton, who is now starting to reel in the race leader, Kenny Wallace. He dispatched, as you saw just moments ago, with Chuck Bown like he wasn't even there. In fact, now Bown is beginning to fall a little bit further back as Jimmy Hensley is about to put him another position further back.
Jimmy Hensley has been one of the strongest cars since the drop of the green in car number 25, the red, white, and blue Oldsmobile, coming out of turn number 4. He started this race 12th. He is the lead man carrying the Hoosier banner now on the Busch Grand National Series. He has marched to the front, and right on his trail is a man with that backup motor put in just moments before the race, Steve Grissom.
And it's quite obvious that Chuck Bown is having some problems. He's fallen well off the pace in the last 10 laps. Interesting story on Jimmy Hensley, which we'll get to in a little while in that 25 car, as Kenny Wallace continues to lead the fray here. We've got 47 laps in the book, almost 20% of the way into the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. We'll be back with more exciting action from sunny Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, right after this. Jeff Burton was a little disappointed in his 6th qualifying position yesterday. He thought he would start higher, but he can't be unhappy with where he sits right now. 2 laps ago, he blew by Kenny Wallace as if he wasn't even there. Quick report from the pits has Chuck Bown with a right rear tire problem. That's why he's falling back through the pack. But Jeff Burton, young driver who is really beginning to show his stuff in this series, is having it his own way so far. Look what he's done to 2nd place Kenny Wallace already.
Well, he's put a lot of distance between he and 2nd place car Wallace. Wallace in the number 36 has moved out to about a 10-12 car length lead. But now Burton has put that on.
Dave Resendiz has a problem in turn number 2 as we see Kenny Wallace being chased by Jimmy Hensley. Down in turn 3, there it is, car number 79 for Dave Resendiz, trying to nurse that crippled racer onto pit road.
And any problems that you have in a track like this are automatically going to cost you a minimum of 1 lap or 2. Clearly a right front tire down on that Oldsmobile. Yeah,
he got up in the loose stuff, and a couple cars had to make some moves to avoid him. Good job, everybody. Tough break for Resendiz, running awfully well early in the race here from a good qualifying starting position, but he's going to go a lap down now.
This battle for 2nd is no longer a battle for 2nd, as now Jimmy Hensley is moved by. An interesting story about Hensley, of course, the winner in Hickory last week. You'll recall in Charlotte, North Carolina, his team announced that he would be running Hoosier tires for the rest of the year. He goes to Hickory and wins on Goodyear. Now, the reason that happened was before that deal was announced, they had a race in Hickory, North Carolina. They qualified the cars, but the event was rained out. Grand National rule states you must start on the same tire that you qualified on. Ergo, Hensley has to run Goodyear. Couldn't have hurt him too much. He goes to victory lane. The first Grand National regular to win at least twice this season.
See Chuck Bown bottling up the back of the pack as everybody trying to take evasive action there. Joe Nemechek along with Robert Powell, Tom Peck. And now we see...
Got a car in the wall in turns 3 and 4.
And that's Robert Powell. You saw him in the shot drifting up the speedway, and he just drifted all the way to the outside wall, brings out the yellow, and he is not under power this time to get back to the start-finish line.
Big break for Chuck Bown. They were trying to nurse that car to a yellow flag, and they barely made it.
Well, Mark, I was going to say, if Chuck doesn't get a break pretty soon, he's going to have to come in and change that tire. He's going to lose a lap. Boy, I tell you, maybe his luck is turning around now finally.
That's our 3rd caution of the afternoon, out on lap number 58 here at the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Jeff Burton is sizzling in his Armor Bacon machine out front of the field. We'll be back with more action in just a moment. We're back under green flag action. Thanks so much for that little message, folks. A lot of people in the infield enjoying the sun, and certainly the action up front is now Steve Grissom has closed in on Jeff Burton's bumper. The reason for that is a number of the other lead cars came to pit road,
including Jimmy Hensley. He pitted for only gas. As crew chief told me earlier, they would go past halfway before they made the tire change. And for Chuck Bown, they changed just the right rear tire. Glenn, maybe you can tell everybody why.
Well, if NASCAR's rules say that you have that one free tire change per position, but if you have a car or a tire that is going down, then you can change that one without a penalty. You can change it again later on in the race, because once the tire is cut and going down, so he only changes the right rear tire. The thing I don't understand, Mark, is they waited a little late. He got out of the pits late. He's over a half a lap behind now on the restart. So that good break seems to have been wasted away.
And that was just moments ago in the pits. As you saw, Jimmy Hensley got blocked in by Chuck Bown coming in. Did a nice little job to get out of there. And then did a nice piece of driving to keep from getting tapped by Tracy. By one of the red machines that came out on the racetrack. There are a number of those in today's event. As you see, Jeff Burton continues up front. He's now starting to open up a little bit of a gap over Steve Grissom. Jeff Burton, the South Boston, Virginia driver, a winner at South Boston earlier this year. He has 2 Grand National victories to his credit. And Mark, that statistic that we saw there on the screen shows something that is very unusual about this track. It wouldn't appear as though anybody really has this place solved.
No, they don't. And you look down through the rundown the last couple of years, and Jeff Burton, 1 good run, 1 bad run. Chuck Bown, the same thing. Bobby Labonte, Jimmy Hensley. You go down through the line, no 2 drivers the past 2 times here at Myrtle Beach have been able to put 2 good runs back to back.
And Chuck Bown, in all fairness to him, last year had one of the best cars in the Speedway. He was chasing Tommy Ellis through almost the entire race, took on gas leak, got caught back in the pack, and when Dale Jarrett's engine hiccuped from fuel starvation, he was swept into a fairly major incident that wiped out a number of the contenders. See the margin now beginning to increase between the first and second place machines, and they are closing in on the lap car 08 of Bobby Dotter, who had one of his best Grand National finishes here at this race last year.
Bobby Dotter, a very good short track driver. Very surprising this early on to see him in danger of going down a lap. This is only the 3rd race this year that Jeff Burton has led. He led at South Boston, of course, the race you talked about, which he won, and a couple of weeks ago at Rougemont. He's been very fast, but he hasn't been at the head of the pack too often yet this season. Very talented young driver. He's out front and pulling away right now.
Well, Mark, this is one of Jeff Burton's favorite types of racetracks. The other Grand National victory he has comes at Martinsville, the flat half-mile racetrack. We see now also car 59, Robert Presley, has made a pit stop for tires. He must have had a tire going down. But back to Burton, he loves a flat half-mile racetrack. The banking is not very steep here. There you see Steve Grissom in 31 giving chase to Burton. But this is Jeff's favorite kind of racetrack, and he's going to be in for an awfully strong showing tonight. They're going to have a tough time with him, I think.
Well, Steve Grissom has had a real roller coaster of emotions this season. Gets into the season after picking up 4 victories last year. One of the real comers in the series, or so it would have seemed at that time. But no sponsorship to open 1991. Then the Roddenberry folks came along, got on the race car, and everybody thought, okay, that's what they needed. A little bit of additional financial support to get them back in the fray. But it just hasn't happened that way for this likable Gadsden, Alabama native. And we talked to them and, asked him a little bit earlier today, who said, are you surprised that you haven't won yet this year?
We'd wind up by the time we got to Myrtle Beach with some wins, but it just hadn't happened. But I got to take my hat off to the crew. These guys worked super hard, and we started the season off without sponsorship and was able to pick up Roddenberry's at the first part of the season, and that's really come in and boosted the team, and we've been running a lot better. The main thing right now is we just need to come up with the right brakes.
And you can see a little bit of damage just in front of the right rear tire. He got into contact with someone a little bit earlier. A little bit of tire wear on the left side, too. That's nothing unusual on short track racing.
We just saw him flash by Todd Bodine, who's in a borrowed race car we heard about in our pre-race show. And so Todd's struggling this afternoon. Steve Grissom is a very talented driver, and you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have any good luck, you can't buy your way to victory lane.
Well, that's absolutely, Mark. You hear the old expression, I'd rather be lucky than good. You see Grissom putting another lap on the 6th car of Tommy Houston. Houston several laps down after that early pit stop, the unscheduled stop. But Grissom is not letting Jeff Burton get out of his sights. He's going to be a contender.
And also an interesting item on that number 6 car, the Roses Buick. of Tommy Houston, which we'll get to a little bit later, as we see now Kenny Wallace trying to work his way back through the pack with Ward Burton, a sandwich with Jimmy Hensley, now also coming back through the field, a full fuel load. He says he can go the distance. He thinks he gets some of the very best gas mileage among the Grand National cars. That window opened up for them on lap 58, so that means he could run 192 laps. Now, if it's all green, Glenn, the question is still a fair question. Can he go the distance, even though he considers himself among the better fuel mileage cars in the garage?
Well, Steve Bird, with the crew chief on the car 36, which is running right in front of me right now, told me right before the race that they could run 198 laps on a tank of fuel. So I got to feel like that if Bird feels his car can go that far, then Hensley certainly feels his can too.
And this is a battle for 8th on the track. Now, Dave Resendiz is a lap car. You can see him drifting up the banking, the number 79 car. The 36 of Kenny Wallace is being pursued by Jimmy Hensley, the unsponsored driver from Virginia, one of the nicest people you'll ever want to meet in this series, and a fella who says, listen, he said, I'm just happy to be here right now. He said, 3 races into the year, we were about ready to fold our tents and go home. He said, now we've got 2 victories. Looks like we're going to be able to go out the rest of the season, and we have caution on the speedway. Caution number 4 comes out on lap number 80. As the field immediately slows down and there is debris on the racetrack. And we will be back with more action as Jeff Burton continues to dominate in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. We'll be back to set them up as they're back in the field here in just a moment. And under our latest caution here at the Myrtle Beach Speedway, we have a new race leader in Steve Grissom, with Bobby Labonte up to second, Joe Nemechek, Robert Presley, and steady Tom Peck. For our doings during this latest round of pit stops, let's go trackside to Bill Hennessy.
Chuck Bown has been in one time. They put in a round of wedge in the right rear corner. Now they're coming back to take on right side tires for that car. The Dave Resendiz car is riding around in 79. He just came in and took on 2 tires. Darrell Bryant pitted Jeff Burton, taking on right side tires and fuel. They're set to go the distance. For everybody else, it was basically fuel and a tire. Bown is back out now at the tail end of the field.
Their troubles just multiplying. I'm sure, Glenn, that they did not want to change right side tires that soon. And you also look at the pothole as they move through turns 3 and 4.
Well, that hole is developing as they enter turn 3. It's kind of unusual to see a hole going into a turn because the cars are on the brakes and not accelerating there. But we understand that it is starting to break up a little and throw some debris up on the racetrack. We'll have to keep an eye on that.
Would that be a reason perhaps behind the rash of flat tires and punctured tires that we've had so far in this race?
And most of them have been over in turns 3 and 4.
And the field is trying to reform for the restart, and that 45 lapped car of Elton Sawyer not giving any room back there. It's always something of courtesy, but sometimes not to get in position for a restart.
Also, Mark, the 05 car, Richard Lassiter, I think got a little confused as to whether he was supposed to go to the inside or the outside. Backed him up for a moment there.
The cars on the top group are lapped cars at this point, so as the field goes back to green on lap number 86, Kenny Wallace storms down to the bottom of the racetrack and makes a sharp move to get back up. And the race leader passing that 79 Dave Resendiz car is Steve Grissom.
Resendiz, I believe, just came off the pit area, and that's what caused the jumble. The cars coming up to speed made everything 3 wide. Everybody made their way through there. That was a very dangerous situation.
Now, Elton Sawyer is that blue number 45 car. That is the car that was driven last year at this race by his wife, Patty Moise. And another piece of irony for you, underneath the hood of that Mike McLaughlin prepared car is Patty Moise's race engine. Of course, they are both Grand National drivers. Patty's making frequent appearances this year, and Elton Sawyer looking for a permanent ride after losing his deal, but he is now dropping off the pace down to the bottom of the speedway as the field goes storming by. Maybe that engine could be in problem. We'll get a report on that from the pits in just a moment, but that's a dangerous spot on the track to be slow.
Steve Grissom has really pulled away from the second place man, Bobby Labonte, who's got his hands full and now loses the position on the racetrack just behind Steve Grissom. Grissom working out of turn 4. You see Kenny Wallace now, the green and black car number 36 taking over second. Bobby Labonte had moved all the way from 23rd to second. Labonte, not a very good qualifier here of late, but he certainly always has something for the race time.
And he's getting a battle now from Joe Nemechek, a second-year driver who's got the preferred groove on the racetrack. This is a 2-wide track as we've got caution action out on the speedway once again. Caution.
We've
for
got a
the
wreck
sixth
over
time.
turn 2. That's Troy Beebe. The car number 9 has crashed into turn 2. He's got it right and underway, but the caution was already out.
The Modesto, California driver who's had what you basically say is a rookie season. Some very strong performances, as you see him at the top of the screen, sliding up. And Glenn, as you mentioned in our pre-race show, you get up a little high and you're dead.
Yeah, he's up in what we call the marbles, Mark, and he just got away from him. He's lucky he didn't do any more damage to the car. He just barely tapped the wall. It stalled on him, but he refired it and kept going. You know, right before this caution, you saw that big lead that Steve Grissom had jumped out to. He is the only car, other than Terry Labonte and Joe Nemechek right now, that haven't made a pit stop. And as I say it, he comes down pit road. He was going to have to make the stop pretty soon because Kenny Wallace had moved into second place, already had new tires on. Grissom was going to have to stop sometime. Wallace was going to have that all-important track position.
And plus, he knew you were going to call him on it.
Well, they're monitoring the broadcast, the telecast, so he knew that it was time for him to pit when I started talking about it.
And they'll want to make that service very quick because we're about to go back to green flag racing with Kenny Wallace now the leader. Joe Nemechek is right behind him, and Bobby Labonte is sitting in that third position. Steady Bobby Labonte, just like you mentioned.
Elton Sawyer out of the race, blown clutch on that Pontiac.
It's a tough break. There's one of the nicer young men in the sport, one of the really articulate gentlemen, good for sponsors, and you hope that all of these guys have a lot of attributes to offer as we go back to green flag action, but there are just certain people that are really good for sponsors, and Elton Sawyer is one of them. But Kenny Wallace is a man who's got a good sponsor on the hood, and he's trying to put it to good use now to pull away. And a Carolina Pride Budweiser 250, 92 laps around the board.
Massive scramble in mid-pack almost caused a 4 or 5 car pileup. Bobby Daughter is jamming everything up. 08, car number 1 moving up underneath him. Now you see Jeff Burton, who led this race early, making his way through there. But Daughter really bottled things up, and how they got through there safely, 4 and 5 wide at times out of turn 2 and on the backstretch. Hard to tell why.
It gets awfully tight there, Mark, particularly on a restart like this. And everybody's wanting to get that position as quickly as they can. You see Jimmy Hensley move under Todd Bodine, number 34 there. Hensley in the 25 car, one of the fastest cars on the racetrack, has been all day.
And as you might suspect, Bobby Daughter was obviously having troubles, comes to the attention of his crew on pit road. He did a nice job, though, when he was having problem of staying up high on the racetrack and not changing his track position. That allowed everybody behind him to make a decision about where they were going to go, and that's an important thing to do to keep from bending up sheet metal.
Well, it looks like a nice gesture on his behalf, but what he was trying to do, Mark, also was to keep from getting run over.
Which is something you don't want to have happen. You've still got 28 hungry Lions out there trying to pick up a victory this afternoon. Kenny Wallace, look at the margin between first and second now. It is considerable.
2.65 seconds from first place. Kenny Wallace back to Joe Nemechek, and Nemechek is about to have his hands full with Jimmy Hensley. Also, Ward Burton's right there, and as well as his brother Jeff. Now you see Bobby Labonte dropping back the Penrose Firecracker Sausage Oldsmobile. He's starting to have some problems after that last restart.
And Hensley is off the pace. Hensley is off the pace in car number 25.
Left front tire
right
in stereo. And you can see sparks being thrown up as his suspension is all the way down at track level now, and that is a bad break for him. He was running excellent without having changed tires to this point in the race. Clearly one of the better cars in this afternoon's contest.
Maybe the man to beat. Maybe the man to beat.
So.
Yeah, very untimely. Of course, anytime you have that happen, it's not a good time. But right after a restart, everybody's stretched out now. He's going to need an awfully good break to get back into the lead lap.
And that allows other cars to move up the field. Very quietly working his way through is that 27 car of Ward Burton. Now, he climbed into that ride a couple of races ago when Elton Sawyer was dismissed. He's having a quiet, strong run, sitting up there in the third spot right now as our race leader Kenny Wallace has things pretty much his own way as he further dispatches Bobby Daughter that much deeper into the field. We've got 99 laps on the book. We're about 2/5 of the way into the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250, and we'll be back with more action from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in just a moment. That is the car of Frankie Baumgartner, who has triggered another caution as we come back here in the Carolina Pride, a Budweiser 250. And that will be an opportunity for some drivers who weren't handling well to come in and get fresh tires. And a lot of cars came storming through the pack trying to get back to the start-finish line to try to get back on that lead lap. Sixth caution of the afternoon so far.
A lot happening right there. Dave Rezendes caught the wall. He had a tire problem. He was having to come on pit road, and then all of a sudden Frank Baumgartner had a problem as well.
Well, Rezendes' car has a broken right front Heims joint. That's a joint that helps to hold the sway bar on the front of the car. And what happens, it allows the front end of the car to move over. This is the second time we've seen him cut a tire. The suspension moves so far that an actual piece of the suspension is probably cutting the tire on the inside of it.
And he's been to the pits several times, not just for tires, but we've seen the hood go up a couple of times as well. Look at that tire smoking.
It's hot. It's hot on that racetrack, and then when you have a tire go out like that.
Well, it's going to take them a few moments here to get things sorted out and get back to green flag action. And we'll be back with more from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Don't go away. We've got a great race going with Kenny Wallace, the leader. The field is just about ready to go back to green flag action with Kenny Wallace, our race leader. And we talked with Kenny before the race as they'll throw the caution for at least another lap or two. They've discovered something on the track not to their liking. NASCAR officials have, of course. We talked with Kenny Wallace, who presently sits third in the Grand National points, and we asked him, have you matured enough to win the championship this year?
Well, I think so. You know, I know that at Myrtle Beach this week, I'm going to try to run good in this race, and if I win, then that's a bonus. Same thing, you know, next week at Watkins Glen, and same thing from week on and week out. I know to win a championship, you can't pay attention to points, but I also know, you know, that while I'm racing that race car, I got to keep the fenders on it to win championships. So it's kind of a, you know, it's a mental situation that you got to put yourself in. You know, kind of like Darrell Waltrip style. You know, you got to be there for the end. That was pretty nifty last week in Pocono. You know, he run real strong.
Well, Kenny Wallace, who's had problems, as you saw in that graphic, had a hard time getting top 10 finishes. Another comment that he made before the race, Mark Darrow, was that they basically sat down and had a meeting and tried to clear the air.
Well, sometimes you can try too hard to make things right. You can try to fix it, and it's not really broken. You just simply have got some bad brakes at the wrong time, and if you try too hard, you can just make the situation worse.
Well, that's right, and you know, I think it's kind of unique, Mark, that his brother is the owner of his car, Rusty Wallace, former Winston Cup champion, and yet he likens the style to Darrell Waltrip. That's a little unusual to me.
I don't think, though, anybody would say that Rusty Wallace is the most patient driver in the world. That's really quite a tribute from Kenny Wallace.
Absolutely.
We're a half a lap from going back to green. Let's set the field for you. Kenny Wallace, of course, your race leader. Jeff Burton sitting second. Chuck Bown third. The 31 car of Steve Grissom is fourth. Right behind him is Ward Burton. The pace car is off the track. The field is back under green, and the four fastest cars are sitting 1 through 4.
Should be real interesting because Jeff Burton and Chuck Bown really were catching Kenny Wallace, and then Wallace, it looks like, had some sort of problem. He's bottling up the pack, and now the car's off the pace. That allows Ed Berry and Robert Presley to make up a lap. Here's Chuck Bown to the inside, Burton in car number 99 to the outside. They're battling for the leads. Big problems for Kenny Wallace.
He is spun coming off of turn 4 and
he is hit by Bobby Labonte.
The first and third men in the points battle have come to grief, and that is major damage for the Grand National points leader as Kenny Wallace is able to pull back to the start-finish line under power.
He stays on the lead lap. He was trying to come on pit road. He was hit from behind by the Ward Burton car, the Gwaltney Buick, as he was slowing, and Burton had no place to go. He spun him right broadside into Bobby Labonte.
And this has major championship implications. Let's take a look at it again. He's well off the pace, and he gets booted by Ward Burton, who obviously miscalculated the speed. Wallace did everything right. He locked up his rear tires, but he's a dead duck, and Bobby Labonte nowhere to go.
At the last instance, Wallace slid down the racetrack, and Labonte had made his choice, Glenn.
Well, he had, Mark. You could see the car wiggle. Labonte's car wiggled twice trying to decide which way that he was going to go. Once he made his move, it was too late to change in. That's a terrible break. You see Bobby out of the car.
Well, Bobby Labonte is out of the car and okay, but probably not too happy. We'll be back to reset the field and show you what that may do in just a moment from Myrtle Beach. We're under caution for the 7th time, the longest walk in motorsports. A driver hits a wall or hits somebody else at the far end of the speedway and then has to go back to his transporter. And as you can see, Bobby Labonte is, well, we saw a moment ago, not a particularly happy person. You can see why. Let's go to Bill Hennessy trackside.
Okay, everybody's distressed down there. Steve Bird says, hey, look, the pits were closed. They told us we could pit. We would take a penalty by going to the longest line of traffic on the restart. Then they flagged him on by and told him he couldn't stop here. Bobby Labonte has told his crew, hey, I'm okay. The car caught on fire. Man, I'm sorry I crashed this thing. But Kenny's still riding around out there. Bertie, when are you going to be able to bring him in?
I don't know. I'm waiting to hear from NASCAR now. First they said we could bring him in and go to the end of the longest line. That gave us time to fix the sheet metal. But then they waved us on, so we're waiting to hear right now. So,
what happened on the restart when he got bumped in the rear?
We had a flat tire as soon as he took the green right rear.
That's the story from down here in the pits, and the complexion of this race is changing.
As you saw, Bobby Labonte has jumped into his transporter, and here is the reason that he is going to be watching the rest of this race.
Well, you see Ward Burton in 27 coming up there. Wallace already off the pace. Ward doesn't realize he's slowed down that much. Gives him a real shot, and it turns Wallace right around. It spins him down, but Kenny locks the car up, and it goes back up the racetrack. You can watch it now start backing up toward the lane of traffic. And you see Labonte coming through there with BB right behind him. Now watch the move that Bobby tries to make. You see him turn left, and Kenny's letting the car go back down now. And Bobby's made his move. He's got nowhere to go. Labonte was a little hot about that. I saw him kind of shake his fist at Wallace when Wallace righted his car and came back around. Obviously, it was not intentional. I just think Bobby was upset with, obviously, his emotions were running high at that point, and upset that he has knocked his car out of the race.
Well, from that camera angle, you were able to see that there's not much damage to the car, but you take a look at the right side of that machine, and that car is significantly battered. As you see, Bill Hennessy is down there, and Bobby Labonte, as he does at the race shop, is working on his own car, doing anything he can to get back out there and save valuable points.
5 points, 10 points, 15 points at the end of the year could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. They've got some major damage there, and Bobby owns his own team. He's a very versatile young man, a very good businessman as well. And let's go back down to Bill Hennessy.
Bobby Labonte is very hot, walking around the car, trying to take the hood off himself. Finally, his dad, Bob Labonte, says, move out of the way, son. We'll take care of things here. The car is badly damaged. The right front frame rail is bent. The radiator is busted, but they're going to try to get him back in here. Still a number of laps to go, and Bobby is just standing by helplessly, but he said, hey, look, I don't want to talk.
Bobby Labonte, this will only be the third race all season that he will not finish in the top 10. He's been Mr. Consistent right from the opening bell.
And also coming out of pit road during at the top of the screen, the 31 car, Steve Grissom, who is sitting in third position before that comes to the attention of his crew on pit road. As you see a number of cars taking this opportunity as we're ready to go back to racing.
And you see Grissom's crew is changing left side tires. They changed right side tires under the last caution. This affords them the chance to change the left side tires. Get him back out there. He's got fresh rubber all the way around. Might be a major move there.
Now, if you recall, if you're just joining our broadcast, NASCAR has waived changing tires under caution without a penalty. So that means you can come onto pit road, change one tire per position on the car without penalty. There's the significant work being done to the right side. Sheet metal damage considerable.
We're getting set to go back to green. Chuck Bown is the leader. He'll have his hands full with Jeff Burton as we're back under green on lap 122 of the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. You see Kenny Wallace coming off pit road. He'll try to stay on the lead lap.
And so far he's able to do is he gets up through the gearbox quickly, but the question is how much damage has been done to the car and how will that affect it at speed, as we're only 1-2 laps now from the halfway point.
Glenn, it looked where that car was hit broadside. That might not have done any chassis damage. The car just may look bad, but it still may be very strong and still may have a very good chassis.
That certainly seems to be the case right now, Mark. He's able to actually put a little distance between himself and leader Chuck Bown in car 63. There you see Bobby Dotter on the inside there. Dotter's car's moved awfully well since he had that earlier problem with the tires. But right now, it appears that Wallace's car is A-OK because he's stretching out that distance between he and Chuck Bown. So if he can catch a caution, he's right back in this thing.
He's on the tail end of the lead lap, but he did get right side tires. So the tail of the tape will come in about 10 or 15 laps when the new discs come off those right side tires.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, if he can stay out there now and build up a little bit of a lead or keep maintaining this lead and catches that caution, then he's right in the same position that all the rest of the leaders are in. He just needs a caution to make up that extra time on the racetrack. He certainly can't do it without benefit of a caution.
Now, unofficially in NASCAR scoring, as we look at the second place car of Jeff Burton, unofficially we're showing fourth place to Jimmy Hensley. We'll see if we get an update from NASCAR scoring on that one. Of course, Hensley lost a couple of laps earlier with the tire going down, but has stayed out of the speedway during these two most recent cautions. So we'll get an update for you there as Chuck Bown now circulates the track. Let's take a look at the Hal Goodson car. Now, here is someone we have not talked about this entire race this afternoon. A Darlington, South Carolina driver, runs here at the Myrtle Beach Speedway. Hal Goodson is a driver who is showing in the top 10 at this point in the race, and this has to be quite a run for him. A driver who graduated from the Citadel Now that is no small feat. That is a very prestigious college. A man who loves racing, though. Darlington, South Carolina native, but does a lot of racing here at Myrtle Beach and doing a very nice job so far this afternoon as we have just passed halfway.
Steve Bird, we understand the crew chief for Kenny Wallace had a problem during that last set of pit stops and injured his hand. We'll try to get an update on that in just a few moments. You see him now standing on pit wall. Birdie's a tough old bird, so you'd have to practically cut his arm off to get him off pit road if there's some sort of problem down there.
And with a wet rag in his hand, it's very likely. Just suffered some burns because the brake pads get very hot here, and it just takes a little slip of the finger, and you'll touch something hot, and that will give you a nice blister that'll give you a keepsake of the race for the better part of 2 weeks.
Chuck Bown is really opening up the lead on the second place car of Jeff Burton. As Hal Goodson, the driver you were just talking about, comes on to pit road. He was running 10th and now is going a lap down to the lead automobiles. And give a call to Ward Burton running 3rd, and in the 4th position, Tom Peck, that quiet, steady driver out of McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania. I mean, he just continues to do his thing, getting those top 10 finishes here on the Busch Grand National Series. 120 laps to go in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. We'll be right back. Chuck Bown leads for the second time this afternoon.
We're under caution for the 8th time in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. The second place car of Jeff Burton moments ago, a left rear tire cut down, slid up the banking in turn 2, had to make a couple of circuits around the track before he could come to the attention of his crew. This is becoming tire trouble central this afternoon.
Well, it certainly is, and it's back to what we talked about at the top of the show. You can see that race, that tire there, blown tire, and you can see the damage that it does to it. What's happening is they're running over debris from where the racetrack is coming apart. It's so hot out there. The surface of these tires is so thin and the temperature building up inside them so hot that it doesn't take very much to puncture these tires. That's why we're seeing these rash of cut and blown tires.
Couple of big breaks. That yellow flag got Kenny Wallace back closer to the leader. He stays on the lead lap. And Robert Presley now is back on the leaderboard in 4th. Remember, he got a lap back a little while back of the caution before, and he is right back in the hunt. He's been very fast today, as he has been over the past 3 or 4 races, as we're back under green.
And Chuck Bown gets an excellent jump off the black number 8 car, which now sits 4th on the speedway. We haven't talked about him so far much this afternoon, but that's David Green sitting in the 2nd position on the track. The 25 car is Jimmy Hensley. He's a lap down, as his daughter, many laps down. The 33 car is Ed Berrier. And then the 5th car on the track, David Green.
There's trouble in turn 4. The car 98 of Goodson has spun again. He just made a pit stop. Luckily, everybody was able to miss him. I don't see how, because the cars were all jammed up on that restart. But he spun it around. Hal Goodson out of Darlington made no contact. It did bring out another caution, however.
And there is a race back to the start-finish line now as Chuck Bown manages to keep Jimmy Hensley a lap down. And that's unusual. Now we're past halfway. And now drivers are saying, hey, so much for that. Here's a replay of the incident.
Tom Peck might have bumped Goodson there in turn 4. He takes evasive action to the high side. Goodson sliding down the track. Good move by Dave Rezendes. He just squeezes by to the outside.
And that wasn't a good break for him. He made his break there. Excellent reaction. David Green, great job so far today in 2nd.
Absolutely. He had a problem in qualifying yesterday. He had to take a provisional start because they had a spring actually come out of the pocket while they were preparing the car for qualifying. They didn't know it. They let the car down on the jack stands, put it on the line. He went out. He couldn't drive the car, had to take a provisional. He's worked his way from last to 2nd. A great job.
Now there's our mid-race summary through 125 laps that'll make up this afternoon's event. A fairly incident-free event, if you will, with only 6 cautions for 26 laps. And the attrition rate, despite some of the beating and banging we've seen, fairly low at that point. Now, the race record for this event set last year by Mark Martin at 76 miles per hour. That car, by the way, is the same car that is under the right foot of Jeff Burton, or rather Jeff Gordon, this afternoon.
Chuck Bown, this is the 2nd time he's led this race this afternoon. As we see the crowd here jammed into the Myrtle Beach Speedway on a very hot and sun-drenched afternoon here in the Grand Strand.
This is a perfect combination. You can get a suntan, have your favorite beverage, and watch a race all at the same time. What more could you ask for?
Well, there's a little altercation in the stands out here, guys. It looks like one of them has had too much of his favorite beverage.
Celebrated the victory too early for whoever.
Yeah.
Well, the field is forming down the backstretch as we'll go back to action. Now, the last time, just a couple of moments ago, Chuck Bown got an excellent jump on David Green and had allowed a couple of lap cars to slip between first and second. Let's see if Green gets a little bit better start this time as the green flag is out from starter Mike Harwood, and we're back racing once again. And once again, Chuck Bown picks up a 3-car length advantage heading to 1.
David Green got a good start because he got inside of Jimmy Hensley. If Hensley had dropped back in line, he would have been very difficult to get around. But David Green got a good jump there.
And guys, as we're talking, Bobby Labonte has pulled the 44 car back out onto the racetrack.
And so it will certainly look like a modified car with all the damage to the front end on that machine, but that's vital. That's not the first time he's been able to do that. Look at that close quarter action there.
Well, you see Green kind of backing up traffic there. He has not changed tires yet. He hasn't made a pit stop yet. All those cars behind him have fresh tires. They're quicker than he is. Even though he's in second place, he's holding up the rest of the field and allowing Chuck Bown to just motor away.
The strategy is holding those right side tires for late in the race. Hopefully not that many cars on the lead lap. And when he pulls the trigger with those fresh tires, that's the strategy apparently they're working on.
Well, absolutely. And plus, there you see Bobby Labonte minus the total front end of that car. Great job of that crew to get him back out that quickly.
And those straps are bungee cords. I think that the trouble on the racetrack is Richard Lassiter up in turns 1 and 2. He has impacted the outside wall. A great qualifying effort of 5th has gone to naught for our 9th caution of the afternoon.
Long afternoon for the Little Rock, Arkansas driver, Richard Lassiter.
Had a good qualifying run, his best ever, but it certainly turned sour on him after that. Guys, I got to think this time, I just have a feeling that David Green's going to bring that number 8 car into the pits and take on some fresh tires.
And we'll be back with more action here from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina under the caution once again. We're past halfway, but a long way to go in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Don't you dare go away. The announcers on this telecast are selected and compensated by Southeastern Communications Group Incorporated.
Getting set to go back to green on lap 148 of the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Chuck Bown, the leader, followed by David Green. On the leaderboard now, Troy Beebe and then Robert Presley. As we're set to go back to green, Chuck Bown trying to keep Jimmy Hensley down laps.
And once again, he gets a good jump, just as he has in the last couple of stops, and that allows Jimmy Hensley to slide in front of David Green, and that's the kind of lap traffic Green did not see. Glenn, as you said moments ago, Green has not changed tires yet, and that could start to play to the rest of the field's advantage.
Really surprised me that time, Mark, that he didn't come in. Now, I'm saying that he did not change tires. I haven't documented it yet, but he's losing so much ground on these restarts, and the field's backing up behind him that I got to feel like they've got to make a tire change sometime.
And one car storming up through the pack, that 31 car at the left of the screen, Steve Grissom. He's been lurking around the leaderboard all afternoon. In fact, has led a portion of this race. He's presently sitting 4th. He went 3 wide just a moment ago. Now he goes underneath Troy Beebe right there. And a little bit of contact at the bottom of the screen in that battle for 3rd.
Can't really tell. His car's light yellow. Troy Beebe's bright yellow.
And car number 59, that's Robert Presley, who was near the top of the leaderboard in the 5th position just moments ago, showing a little bit of smoke. So that's not good news. Now, you're saying 34, is that Todd Bodiner, isn't it? Yes, it is. That is Todd Bodine. That is a Bobby Moon car. As you may have seen at the top of our broadcast, if you were with us earlier, he had problems at last couple of races. Really just didn't have a car built and ready to go. Half the crew is his normal Grand National crew, half is Bobby Moon's.
We get word now that David Green has changed right side tires, so he is in big trouble.
And there's trouble up in turn 4 as Jeff Burton and Ed Ferree have come to grief in the wall. That brings out the caution once again. Significant damage to the Saxonburg, Pennsylvania driver in car number 49, and Burton is stopped.
The leader, Chuck Bown, is trying to race back because he's trying to hold off Jimmy Hensley. When you can keep Hensley down laps, you need to keep him there. Bown is able to do that as you see the smoke pouring from the armored Chevrolet of Jeff Burton, who led this race early on.
Yeah, ever since Burton took the lead, everything has turned upside down for him, Mark. He's still got a problem on the right front. He's got a fender in against the tire. He's going to have to come in, but he did go down another lap.
And here's a replay of the incident, our 11th caution of the afternoon. At the top of the screen, you see that looks like Ferree's car just made the hard right turn toward the wall. A right front tire?
Ferree blew a right front tire, and Burton had already made a move to go around him on the outside, and as he started up the racetrack, it just took Jeff Burton right with him. Bad break for Jeff. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Ed Ferree, a Rookie of the Year contender who's went to the Bondurant driving school in anticipation of next week's race at the Watkins Glen. Getting a little bit more action this afternoon than he cared for. As you see Jeff Burton now coming to the attention of Darrell Bryant and that crew. A lot of smoke from a sheet metal rub, and they will obviously go to the right side of that car and change tires as the field is forming for a restart. And we'll have more of that action here from the Myrtle Beach Speedway in just a moment. Don't go away. Great Grand National action here on TNN. Back here at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the caution for the 12th time is waved for Curtis Markham up in turns 3 and 4. That seems to be the hot spot on this speedway. Look at that. That car he's got looks like it's a subcompact now, like the NASCAR dash cars that run here at Myrtle Beach periodically.
Mark, it looks like he also has cut a tire and then got into the wall going into the turn. That hole we showed you developing over in turn 3 must be having major implications now. There's a lot of debris over there. These hot tires are hitting that debris. They're bursting going into the turns. That's the worst possible time that you can cut a tire down.
Well, Curtis Markham, a driver who makes occasional Grand National starts, a veteran short track racer from Virginia with many wins and track championships. Not a good start for him here today. 161 laps are on the board. Chuck Bown continues to lead in quest of his second victory of the year. It will not go to Curtis Markham today. Don't go away. A lot more Grand National action still to come. Now, this is an unusual vantage point. There's certainly no sideline problems there.
No, these guys
are
right in the middle of the infield on that cherry picker there. Somebody's going to let them down. Evidently, they're charging $5 to get these guys to put them up there. That's pretty good.
Well, you talked idea. You talked before about, you get sun, you watch a good race. The benefits now, you can have a carnival ride or two during caution. So, I mean, you really get your money's worth.
There are no helicopter rides permitted at this track. This is the closest thing. Let's check in with Bill Hennessy, who, as you can see, is right there in the thick of action on pit road.
Well, he's got a little grease fire because it's busted the bottom heim joint on the right side of the tire rod end, and it's actually caved in a little more than he anticipates. The left side tire won't even turn, so Curtis's efforts may be to no avail.
That expert commentary from Bill Hennessy, who has raced here at the Myrtle Beach Speedway, run NASCAR dash, so when he says it's a heim joint, you can pretty well believe it.
Well, that's kind of unusual, Mark. That's the second report of a broken Heims joint we've had today. You can race 2 or 3 years and never break a Heims joint, and we've had 2 break in this race today. That's highly unusual.
Well, it's going to take a few moments for them to continue to repair the speedway, get the fluid up that may have been dropped from the Curtis Markham incident. And gentlemen, this really sets up an issue here as we've got 84 laps remaining. It looks like we've got something of a crapshoot going here with the way tires are failing.
Well, it certainly is, Mark, and right now Chuck Bown has the big advantage. Of course, Steve Grissom in the 31 car has moved right up on his bumper narrow wheel on this restart, so I think 2 of the quickest cars on the racetrack are going to be right up front. But also, Jimmy Hensley used this extended caution period to come in and change left side tires, and also he evidently had a right side tire going down because they changed the right front tire. He's making an all-out last gamble to try to get that lap back. There you see a broken brake rotor from the 75 car. That's the reason for all the problems that they're having right there.
And he's going to be in the pits a good while they repair that. That's not just something you slap on like a tire.
They're now starting to stack up behind the pace car once again. I think Chuck Bown is going to have his hands full with Steve Grissom on this start. I believe Steve Grissom right now is the fastest car on the racetrack.
I agree with you, Mark. I think he is too, and he's really going to put some pressure on Bown. You see the car number 8, David Green, coming in 3rd spot, and you just see the front car number 9, Troy Beebe, doing a great job today, overcoming earlier spin, is running in the top. In fact, in 4th position right now.
And we talked to Chuck before the race, and we really asked him, we said, is it hard not to press when things start going bad as we go back to green? And Chuck Bown continues now as the race leader, but he's got a clear racetrack right behind him. And the spot that is next occupied is with Steve Grissom. There's Troy Beebe in the 9th car. The separation between 1st and 2nd, only a car length.
Steve Grissom really putting the heat on Chuck Bown as we see some racing in the back of the pack there. That's Ed Barrier in the 33 trying to go around the number 9 car, the yellow and white Troy Beebe machine, which is still on the lead lap.
And Steve Grissom has closed up right on the rear deck lid of Chuck Bown. This is a good battle for the lead developing. Steve Grissom appears to have the fastest car on the racetrack.
Steve Grissom's highest finish this year was a 2nd place at Nazareth as he and Bown make a little contact in turn 2. Bown got squirrely. Grissom backed off and let him gather his car back up. But his best finish of the year, 2nd place at Nazareth to Chuck Bown. He does not want to see an instant replay this afternoon.
Well, those two cars have used the fact, Mark, that there's a lot of lap traffic in front of the third and fourth place cars. They've pulled out to a big lead over third place David Green right now.
Well, Steve Grissom is, a fellow that has been trying so hard this season. Everybody thought he would have a dynamite year after 1990. And really, it's been a very disappointing year for him in many respects. And we asked him before the race if he's just, maybe trying too hard.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's something that's to a race car driver is being patient. And a lot of times I catch myself really running when I should be patient. And it's something to try to keep reminding yourself. And if you can ever get to where you're finishing the top 5 running in the pack, then hopefully you get your share of wins.
We talked to many of the car owners up and down pit road here in the Grand National Division, and even some Winston Cup car owners say that, pound for pound, one of the very best drivers in this series is Steve Grissom, and he's really marked for stardom. Chuck Bown is another one of those drivers who's a little bit older than him and has had a stint in Winston Cup prior, ran some Winston Cup events last year, Mark. But here's a fella too that was looking for the right break to maybe step into Winston Cup racing soon.
Well, Chuck Bown is far more experienced and has been around NASCAR racing a lot longer than most people realize. He was the 1976 NASCAR Winston Racing Series champion, the Winston Cup equivalent on the West Coast. He went into the NASCAR Busch Grand National North Series, nearly won a championship there, came south to the Grand National Series, and of course won the championship last year. That little sojourn took 2 decades, so this man has had a lot of racing under his belt, and he's starting to pull away a little bit now from Steve Grissom. Grissom, how much of an advantage? Bown does not have the left side tires. Grissom has fresh tires all the way around. He's made his changes. Is there any advantage to that, or is Bown able now to run the newness a little bit off those tires that Grissom has?
Well, you see it, Mark. You see him pushing away the 75 Pro Curtis Markham. Obviously, it should be an advantage. I believe that Grissom is searching the racetrack now for a groove. He drops back a little bit, then pulls back up on him. I think he's just looking for the right groove that he can put a move on Bown.
Well, Chuck Bown has had his share of bad luck this year, and we talked to him about how a driver presses when things are going bad.
Well, that's my style. I'd like to lead every lap of every race, but, it just doesn't always pay in these 250-lap races. You kind of got to take care of your equipment. Who leads the first half or 2/3 isn't really important. It's who leads that last lap that counts. And last year, this particular race was a perfect example. Tommy Ellis led for 1:99 and ran out of gas with 1 to go and lost the race. So, that's what we need to work on is the latter part of the race. If we've got to fall back and take care of our equipment to be there, that's what we'll do.
And Mark, you talk about the racing fortunes, how sometimes they smile one week and frown at you the next week. You remember Chuck Bown a couple of weeks ago on our TNN broadcast, almost got through a major incident and smash. Right rear, breaks it. Then you look what happens to Kenny Wallace today in a hard impact.
He had the same impact to the car, but you see Wallace's car was hit in the middle. Bown's car was hit in the rear tire. It knocked him out, where Wallace was able to continue. And, Chuck Bown looked like he was getting Glenn on a little bit of a hot streak. He won Nazareth. He came back, won the pole at Hickory. And then when that race rained out, it seemed like they lost the momentum, and they just haven't been able to gather it back up again.
Well, they certainly were. You're seeing a tremendous battle for 4th place right there. You see Kenny Wallace in 36 move under Ward Burton in 27, with Robert Presley in 59 got his nose stuck right up Wallace's tail.
Wallace easily takes the position as Burton slides up the racetrack, and there isn't much of a groove on that high side as we've seen earlier in the event. You get a full lane up there and you are in trouble. We've seen several cars up toward the wall there this afternoon.
Robert Presley has been one of the most consistently strong cars all year over the past 2 races. He's led 250 laps. He's led 387 for the year so far, and for the Busch Grand National Series regulars, that ranks him number 2.
And you see car 99, Jeff Burton, once again coming down pit road with a cut right rear tire. Boy, I tell you, he's really had his hands full with bad tires today.
And we're also watching what apparently is smoke out of the 59 cars. He's coming up off the corner, and we'll follow that story. But there's Jeff Burton, an early race leader, very strong car who's had tire trouble, as so many top runners have had today.
Mark, I've been watching the 59 car Presley. There seems to be like a slight oil leak or somewhere in the car because it only smokes when he accelerates. So that's usually a pretty good sign. But it doesn't get any worse, it's not going to bother him.
That's something that Mike Wallace had, the rookie contender who failed to qualify for today's event, as did 7 other drivers, had an oil leak. I see a little bit of tail coming off of the Kenny Wallace car. It's nothing significant to the machine. It certainly won't affect his running at all. But back up front there, we talk about the oil issue. Sometimes they overfill the tank.
Well, there are a lot of things that could cause a slight puff of smoke like that, and I've seen guys do that from start to finish and win the race with a car smoking like that. So right now, I don't think he's too worried about it. His main concern is trying to figure out a way to get around Kenny Wallace.
Now, David Green, that 8 car right there, is in 3rd place, well behind the 2 race leaders, which have built up a good significant advantage here, a 5-second lead over 1st and 2nd, back to that 3rd place spot. There's Kenny Wallace. He's trying to reel him in and doing a nice job of it. Battered and beaten Pontiac and all. You see that smoke once again. That is coming off the Robert Presley car and not the Jimmy Hensley car right behind.
Yeah, and I think that those 2 cars are slowed up enough now. Hensley's really wanting to get around them. Again, he's got fresh left side tires. He needs to get around those cars to get up to Chuck Bown, catch a caution, and try to get that lap back. He's still 1 lap down the 25 car.
And folks, we want to remind you that there's great NASCAR action here on TNN every Sunday with Inside Winston Cup Racing, a half-hour motorsports magazine show. Be sure to check your local listings for the day, which is, of course, Sunday. But check for the time because it's shown several times on Sunday. Great NASCAR action. I'll have a full report on this event, plus the latest from the Winston Cup race, which is going to be in Michigan tomorrow. Michael Waltrip is on the pole. Jeff Bodine alongside him for the champion spark plug, or rather the Miller Genuine Draft 400. Sometimes hard to keep those sponsorships straight. All the Winston Cup races are sponsored, and as are most of the Grand National races. A great tribute to the popularity of the sport and the marketing potential that companies are beginning to see by sponsoring a race.
Chuck Bown may have gone to the whip, Glenn. He's starting to pull away from Grissom just a little bit as they work out of turn 2, moving around the Bobby Daughter car, putting him down another lap.
You're
Bown,
right.
you know, the champion from last year. You know, this is almost typical of the race at Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Led early, had a little problem about the halfway mark, caught a lucky caution flag, and was able to come on and win the race.
You know, earlier before the race, I talked to Jeff Hensley, the crew chief on the car, Mark, and he was very, very confident at that time. Said that once they got going, their car really didn't slow that down that much. Once the tires began to wear, he cut a tire earlier on, had to make the change, almost got a lap down, but he's caught a couple of breaks. Now he really seems to be back where Jeff thought he would be all along.
And Chuck Bown still shaking off the effects of an injury he suffered a few weeks back. It's torn knee ligaments. He's okay. He played golf Thursday down here in Myrtle Beach. Had no problem whatsoever playing golf. So Mark Garrow can attest he was along with him. But when he's in the race car, he still wears a knee brace and will for just a little while longer.
That's because you just can't take the risk. Another impact would do even more damage. The knee is severely weakened, although it is getting better. So Bown will race with that for the next 3 or 4 races. See David Green in the back of the pack. Cecil Eunice right behind him, and Robert Presley currently running 4th now, just 1 lap car separating him from the 3rd place car of David Green.
And Robert Presley is really starting to show the kind of maturity, Glenn Jarrett, that it takes to be a consistent top runner in this series. You've got some observations about that.
Well, you say you're looking at Chuck Bown, the leader, continue to put distance on him. To answer your question, Mark, there's 98. That's Hal Goodson with a cut tire, another one of the many today. But that word patience that was used with Kenny Wallace a while ago, that is the toughest word in a race driver's vocabulary. That's the toughest thing to learn is patience. And that's what Ricky Pearson, who is Robert Presley's crew chief, has helped to get Robert to learn is be patient. Let the things come to you. Don't try to force them all the time. And since he has done that, he has been one of the strongest cars in the last 3 races in this series.
Well, Presley picked up his 2nd Grand National victory just a couple of weeks ago here on TNN. Now that's Ward Burton in the number 27 car. He just occupied that ride in the last couple of races. He's had a good, strong run all afternoon, been able to stay in the top 10. Right behind him is the unsponsored Chevrolet of Joe Nemechek.
Ward's younger brother, Jeff, of course, has gotten more publicity because he's won a couple of races on the Busch Grand National Series, but Ward's a very good race driver as well.
Well, no question about it, Mark. Both those guys are very, very talented. It's unusual to see brothers running in a division together like that with that much talent. Kind of reminds me when Dale and Glenn Jarrett ran in this thing.
And Troy Beebe, who was having a good top 5 run, but after that last restart faded, is the car now being put a lap down by race leader Chuck Bown. And look to the low side of the speedway. Steve Grissom looks inside. He is down on the track, but he'll have to lift and think better of it this time by.
Chuck Bown will not invite Troy Beebe to any kind of birthday party or after dinner party. After this race at Myrtle Beach, he had built up a 6th or 7th car length lead. It went evaporated instantly when Troy Beebe got in his way.
Well, you know, it's unusual. Just a few laps ago, Beebe was running 4th, and now they put a lap on him. I tell you, those 2 guys out front are really putting some distance between themselves and the rest of the field. Meanwhile, Robert Presley has moved into 4th place. You see Bound starting to open the distance up a little bit again, but I don't think that Grissom has got anything for him right now, barring a problem on Bown's car.
And you can bet that Steve Grissom will be watching how Chuck Bown works race traffic very carefully here.
We've completed 200 laps, 50 to go in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250. Chuck Bown is probably wishing, hey, I wish this thing was 200 laps like last year, as the smoke continues to come out of the Alliance Truck Training Center's Oldsmobile of Robert Presley. It seems like when he gets on the gas, he hits the throttle, it comes out the header pipe.
Well, it is, but here in the last few laps, Mark, he's also starting to smoke. Watch as the car goes into the turn and he decels. You see a little smoke there. He's out of the gas there. That's not a good sign. There's definitely a problem internally in the engine. And then he moves by number 8, David Green, who was running third, and now he's got a problem.
And once again, a driver gets up high coming off a turn 2 into the marbles, loses traction. David Green falls back well into the field, lost several positions on the speedway. He is now back up to full song. A driver who had used a provisional start to get into the race, but felt very good, as we mentioned earlier, about his ability to move up through the pack. But one little mistake, not unlike a mistake he made at Hickory last week, as Warren Burton now having a little bit of trouble getting the engine fired coming off pit road. That's a bad break for him. That's going to cost him a lap.
Well, he came in for a tire change, Mark, and once the engine stalled on it, it's so hot out here, and once they stall, it's hard for these starters to refire these cars once the temperatures reach the point they have now.
Burton now coming back up to speed as our race leader is now starting to work through traffic. This is where he got into trouble a little bit before, moving around Jeff Burton. The next car he'll have to pick off, the one of Jeff Gordon, who is the rookie points leader. And Bown boxed in, no place to go there, and he certainly can't make it 3 wide.
Sometimes the drivers would like to get out of the way. Jeff Burton was trying to get out of the way, but with the high side of the track blocked by Jeff Gordon, even with Burton getting out of the way, Bown was blocked in, and now you see the Todd Bodine car as Jeff Gordon refuses to give way to the leader, and the high side of the racetrack, they work around Bodine, and now Bown will go to work mano-o-mano on Jeff Gordon now without any other lap cars to deal with. Jeff
Gordon's a smart young driver, though. He sees in the mirror, and he gets out of the way, gets to the high side of the racetrack. That is maturity way beyond your years. A 19-year-old driver, one of the real comers in the sport. There is no doubt that he has a future in stock car racing after terrorizing the USAC midget circuit last year.
No doubt about it.
No question about it. I agree, Mark. He is going to be one of the names to be reckoned with in this series for years to come, and probably on into Winston Cup racing. Now let's see if Grissom can move by Gordon with the same ease that Bown was able to once that Gordon afforded Bown that lower lane there. That's the fast way around this racetrack, is on the bottom of it.
Now, we know in road racing that drivers can somewhat pick and choose the positions where they will pass somebody, but how much is that true here in short track oval racing?
Well, generally, Mark, you have a portion or a position on the track that your car seems to work a little better. Maybe getting off of turn 2, getting off of turn 4, getting into one of the turns, and you generally want to try to pick that place there because that's where you can make up the most ground at one particular time. Once you get your nose alongside a guy like that, he generally, particularly if he's getting lapped, he's going to let you go on by him.
Jimmy Hensley again having problems in that Don Beverly Oldsmobile. He's off the pace again. Hensley has had one of the fastest cars all day, but if it weren't for bad luck, he'd have absolutely none at all. He makes another unscheduled stop on pit road.
And if you're just joining our broadcast a little bit early, Bobby Labonte T-boned Kenny Wallace on the passenger side and spent many laps behind the wall. Bobby Labonte did. He's back out on the racetrack. Jimmy Hensley is the number 2 points man, and he is losing valuable ground in points. And Bill Hennessy is trackside.
An unscheduled pit stop for the 25 cars. Jimmy Hensley just came in and rolled back out for Bobby King. A bit disgusted. Why did you have to bring him in? Right rear tire flat. Right rear tire flat on a Jimmy Hensley melt.
And they have gone through a lot of Hoosier and Goodyear rubber this afternoon. And we've still got 39 laps to go, Andy. We're not saying they're running out of tires, but they have had to change a lot more rubber than they ever expected to this afternoon.
Lead cars for Chuck Bown and Steve Grissom, they have things their own way right now. It appears they're going to decide this issue amongst themselves, but no matter what they're doing out there, they know that they're maybe on a ticking time bomb. Run over the rock, run over the ruts in turn 3, or some of those little marbles we've talked about, and it all goes away in a heartbeat.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Mark, and what they're trying most to do right now, even while they're working traffic, is not to let the car get either too low or too high on the racetrack. They want to run in that established groove so they don't take a chance and run over any of that debris.
That's Glenn Jarrett along with Mark Arrow, Mark Allen, and Bill Hennessy trackside. Happy to have you along here for TNN's live coverage of Grand National Racing. This is stop number 16, the start of the second half of the season. It has been a most eventful race for the men up front, the three men who look like they will be battling for the Grand National points lead.
Every time it looks like Steve Grissom is able to move up on Chuck Bown because of the lap traffic. As soon as Bown clears it, he pulls away, but he has got another big pack ahead of him. Dave Resendiz, Troy Beebe there in car 9, and then that beat-up Penrose Oldsmobile for Bobby Labonte.
Well, Chuck Bown had things so much his own way through this stretch of the 1990 season. It seemed like he really couldn't do anything wrong, but after running so well in 1990, well, what does he think about the bad luck of 1991?
Well, it's difficult. It gets a bit frustrating at times, but, you know, we've been running strong. I think that's the most important thing. That's what keeps the team pulling together and working hard. We're running at the front of the pack. We're just not there when it counts, but we're working on that part real hard. We're looking forward to the race today to see if we can't find victory lane again.
Just a couple of moments ago, a close call for Bown as Troy Beebe was right there presenting something of a roadblock, but a very good reason for that. Beebe is now on pit road getting left side tires. That has been the story of the race. Will your tires last or not? Punctures have said in many cases, no, you will not.
You know, it's unusual, Mark. Almost everybody I talked to on pit road before the race said they felt like they could go the distance on tires concerning wear. Nobody factored in this terrible puncture problem that we're having today.
And part of the reason for that is, as we showed you a little bit earlier in this telecast, that a portion of the racetrack over in turn 3 is coming up. There's a little run over there. The section of turn 1 and 2, there's a little bit of a bump there, so a little asphalt coming up now as Chuck Bown puts another lap on Jimmy Hensley.
Jimmy Hensley, the gentleman as always. I'm out of the race. I'm out of contention. Go ahead, buddy. Go and take a shot at it. And of course, as we mentioned before on these broadcasts, Jimmy Hensley is the nephew of Chuck Bown's car owner, Hubert Hensley.
Racing is a very small family. When they say the family of racing, they mean it both literally and figuratively, though. With the recent passing of Benny Parsons' wife, there was a huge outpouring of affection and support out of the racing community for that. Of course, a popular ESPN announcer. We want to send along our condolences. Benny, our thoughts are with you, and we look forward to seeing you back in the broadcast booth just as quick as you possibly can.
Steve Grissom needs a yellow flag now because he's starting to get too many lap cars in between his car and the leader, Chuck Bown.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on one point, Mark. He doesn't want to see a yellow flag right now. He can't handle Chuck Bown, and a yellow flag would enable Robert Presley, who's running third, to move up on his rear bumper. I think Steve realizes right now he's got a second-place car. He's got to stay out there, do what he's doing right now, and in his eyes, or in his mind, hope that maybe something happens to Bown. You don't want to wish bad luck on anybody, but you do.
Well, Steve Grissom would really use a second-place finish because the Grand National points are so close from 4th all the way back through the 13th position that every position on the racetrack right now, today, the next race, and the race after that is so important.
4th to 12th, where Steve Grissom came into this race, just 144 points. The gap 1st to 3rd is 139. Then you have the next 9 automobiles within 144. Chuck Bown comes into this race in the 10th position. And for Bown, last year at this time, he was up by 113. He came into this race minus 412. He will pick up a bunch of points on Bobby Labonte, but Labonte, by coming back out onto the racetrack, is going to stem the bleeding just a bit this afternoon.
Well, the 33-car med barrier just past Troy Beebe, whose great run all the way through mid-race seems to be going for naught as he's falling further back in the pack. The 6th car in the center of the screen is somebody that has never contended today. Tommy Houston in the 6th car, the Roses Buick, a driver who had a funny incident before the race today on pit road. They were practicing. He pulled out, collided with Warren Burton, had some cosmetic damage to the right front section of that car. No handling damage, but that was a portent of the kind of day he was going to have.
Well, you're exactly right there. It set the stage for things, Mark, and it's been bad all day. You see the bumper coming off of 19, Cecil Eunice there.
And the question is, will that come off on the speedway? If it does, that very well could precipitate a caution. Mike Harwood has the caution flag between his legs, but so far has not brought it out. And we stay green. 226 laps are now on the books. As
Chuck Bown moving around Troy Beebe,
continuing to percolate around this speedway in the Nescafe Classic Pontiac.
He does that very carefully. Troy Beebe and Chuck Bown have come so close to getting tangled up in the last 50 laps or so. Cecil Eunice will now bring that car onto pit road, and they'll tear off that rubber piece of bumper. It wouldn't have been anything too dangerous to come out onto the racetrack because it is just rubber, but you don't want it flapping back there. NASCAR brought him in.
A driver who's run down in southern Georgia and northern Florida on both asphalt and dirt, and he's even run some ARCA races this year, a rookie contender in 1991. Now, right behind Chuck Bown, that is the 44 car of Bobby Labonte, who is really running quite well on the speedway, despite the fact that part of his aerodynamics are missing in the form of no hood and right front quarter panel disappearance. Quite a disappearing act that his crew performed when he was behind the wall earlier.
A snow plow would be more aerodynamic than Bobby Labonte's car right now. The gap, by the way, first to second, 2.93 seconds.
Well, Labonte is not worried about aerodynamics right now. He's got one thing on his mind, and that's racking up as many points as he can to try to hold on to that points lead.
Gentlemen, we all sat down before the race today, and we did some computations about what does it take to run in the top 10 in the Grand National Series. And Mark, you and I particularly had some interesting observations about how many times these drivers have finished, even though they've had trouble.
Bobby Labonte, like we've talked earlier about, he has problems sometimes in qualifying, especially on the short tracks. But when you look at the end of the race, and there, as you see, the battle for the 4th spot, Kenny Wallace trying to hold off the Florida native, Joe Nemechek, in car number 87. But when you look at the rundown at the end of the race, there is Labonte again. His average for the year coming into this race, 8.6. That's phenomenal as Joe Nemechek wedges to the inside of Kenny Wallace.
And there's a spin down the backstretch. That's Cecil Eunice missing part of his bumper. Didn't mess up the aerodynamics of his car enough, but obviously something wrong with that machine. There will be no caution as now Nemechek takes over the 4th spot. His best finish this year came on one of our TNN telecasts in South Boston. There you go, up again in turns 1 and 2. Get high and you are in trouble.
Tommy Houston sneaks by. Hal Goodson sneaks by. That could have been a multi-car wreck. Some good driving back there.
It's not like the field isn't trying to bring out a caution, which would be the best thing for Steve Grissom and Chuck Bown's other pursuers, but they're managing to get out of the way. And as you say, great driving by Hal Goodson, particularly to avoid hitting the spinning car of Cecil Eunice.
We still got a terrific battle going on for 4th. You see Nemechek in the 87 below 36 there. They've run into traffic now, and it's enabled Wallace to take the position back from Nemechek. He had moved into 4th. Now Kenny Wallace moves back ahead of him.
What a big break for Kenny Wallace when he was hit in that accident, T-boned by Bobby Labonte. He was hit in the one part on the race car that would not adversely affect his performance. So he will come out of here, it looks like, with at least a top 5 finish and will pick up a bunch of points on not only the leader, but the man directly in front of him in 2nd place, Jimmy Hensley, as well.
A number of these drivers will be very glad after this event to go to Watkins Glen next week, where there are very few walls very close at hand. It's mostly road course racing, something that they haven't done since 1987.
Well, and Mark, you know, they're getting a lot of road course practice here today because they're making about as many right turns as they are left.
Joe Nemechek also doing a little dirt tracking. He has been really kicking out the rear end of that car as he is really trying to get after Kenny Wallace. Wallace on the outside. Nemechek just slid up the racetrack a little bit. Couldn't get the bite out of the inside of turn 2 that he was looking for. He falls back once again behind the Cox-treated lumber Pontiac.
It would appear that Nemechek maybe has a slightly better car in that portion of the speedway than Kenny Wallace does.
Well, he's definitely getting a bite quicker coming off the turns. Wallace seems to have a little more motor, though, and he's able to pull away from him down the straightaway.
And that time, Nemechek went a little bit too low on the speedway, and you saw what happened there. Lost very valuable track position. Right behind him is Ward Burton. He is a lapped car after a strong run early.
Nemechek's got a tire going down. He's really getting sideways now. I believe he's got a problem.
When Chuck Bown comes by the next time, there will be only 11 laps to go in this race. And you know, for Steve Grissom, again, it's got to be a little deja vu. I go back to Nazareth. He finished 2nd to Chuck Bown. On just about any other day, he had the winning car, except he ran into somebody who was just better that day. And again, his nemesis is going to be Chuck Bown, it appears, as this race is rapidly drawing to a close. Just 10 laps to go in the Budweiser Carolina Pride, Budweiser 250.
But 2nd is better than 3rd, 3rd is better than 4th, and et cetera, et cetera.
Knee bone to the ankle bone. And
yeah, just a reminder, folks, as we're heading down into the final laps, just 10 remaining here in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250, that tomorrow morning at 11:30 Eastern here on TNN Motorsports Magazine, where they'll set up the racing day and give you all the latest news, and then TNN Motorsports Magazine afternoon edition at 6:30 Eastern, where Pat Patterson and the entire crew there will wrap up the afternoon in racing for the most complete coverage of action in NASCAR and in racing throughout. Make sure you stay with TNN all day Sunday.
If Chuck Bown holds on to win this race, it will be his 9th career Busch Grand National Series victory, his 2nd of 1991. He has 8 short track victories, or he will if he wins this race this afternoon. And, of course, that super speedway win a few weeks ago at Nazareth.
Bound has got that sizable lead, but if we can get back to the battle now, developing for 2nd position, Robert Presley has moved right up on the bumper. There you see him, car number 59, trying to take away 2nd place. from Steve Grissom in the 31 car.
And this ought to be quite a battle because Robert Presley gives no quarter, and neither does Steve Grissom. Grissom needs a good finish. Presley wants to pick up another spot and does so handily.
With smoke pouring out of that Oldsmobile, Robert Presley made it look very easy. Drops Grissom back to the 3rd spot.
Looks like the more it smokes, the faster it runs.
Maybe it's afraid of what he's going to do to it after the race.
He could put up a smoke screen. He might be able to win it.
He's probably saying, when I get you home.
I'll tell you what, if Steve Grissom, if anything, is beginning to fall off the pace, we have to wonder if there isn't a problem. And now you see a little squirrely there. That could be a tire going down on that machine as well.
We'll call it instant replay number 5. Jimmy Hensley's on pit road with another cut down right rear tire.
And Glenn, you almost have to wonder if the way they set up the spacing on ball joints and all the spacers on that upper control arm, if maybe it wasn't just set a little bit too close for that Hoosier tire with all the tire problems that he's had.
Well, that's certainly a possibility, but with the amount of testing that they do, Mark, I imagine they work those problems out. He's just got an extreme bad run of luck today. He just had terrible luck.
Chuck Bown has nearly a straightaway lead over the new number 2 car, Robert Presley. That is an equivalent of 5.2 seconds. So apparently if Bown can say trouble-free and not get a punctured tire with 5 laps to go, he's going to win his 2nd race of the year.
But drivers are continuing to try to bring out another caution as Jeff Gordon slid up the banking in turns 1 and 2 just a moment ago. And yes, they're praying. They want the victory. They've got one already, but there's never too many victories because you never know when the next one may come. But Jeff Gordon slid up the banking a little moment ago up in turns 1 and 2. Did a real nice job to save the car and keep the field under green. Just 4 circuits to go.
It might be worse on the pit crew, Glenn, in the closing laps. The driver still has something to do to keep his mind occupied and stay busy. All they can do is hope and wait.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that, Mark. Those guys in the pits are just sitting there biting, biting fingernails, crossing and uncrossing arms, fingers, toes, whatever. But the driver's got plenty to do to keep his mind on it.
Chuck Bown, who last year at this event suffered a significant enough wreck where his hood was shoved up and he could not see over the top of it to drive around the racetrack, appears to have very little problems as he will be heading toward victory this afternoon. Just 2 laps remaining. 2 laps we've had in the history of this event here. 3 different pole winners. We've had 3 different race winners. Actually 4 different pole winners, with Chuck Bown today being the 4th different pole winner. But he stands to be also the 4th different race winner.
White flag is out for Chuck Bown. Just 1 more circuit around this half-mile racetrack. He'll have career victory number 9 and his 2nd of the 1991 campaign.
Chuck Bown, the Portland, Oregon driver, down the backstretch for one last time. Race number 16 in the 1991 Busch Grand National Series will go to Chuck Bown in the Nescafe Classic Pontiac. 2nd place will go to the smoking Robert Presley. 3rd unofficially to Steve Grissom. 4th to Kenny Wallace. But congratulations to Chuck Bown, and we'll go trackside to talk to the happy winner and the crew in just a moment. Back with more action from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Busch Grand National action won today by Chuck Bown over 31 other drivers. For the 2nd time this season, Chuck Bown has driven to victory lane, and our Bill Hennessy is standing by with a happy but a little warm race winner.
Well, Chuck's been joined in victory lane by his wife, Debbie, and he's quite happy. You know, you dominated the whole last part of the race there, and it looked like you had some adversity in the early going when you had to make that pit stop.
Yeah, you know, it was flat tire city today at Myrtle Beach. It was just an unfortunate situation, but we took our turn with 2 flat tires early in the race. The car ran great. Green flag, the checker flag, but those 2 flats early in the race put us way behind. But we came back finally. We overcome some bad luck, and the car was strong enough. We were able to get the track position back as others had their problems, and we come out on top of the Nescafe Classic Pontiac. I just want to thank the whole Hensley Racing team. They did a super job this weekend. We've been having tough luck. We needed to win today.
Lady Luck certainly smiled on you this afternoon here at Myrtle Beach. It certainly is turning around your season.
Well, there's a long way to go yet in the 2nd half, and if we can keep it rolling, we'll try to get back up there and give those point contenders a run for their money is what we hope to do.
Congratulations from the entire TNN family for your victory here at Myrtle Beach in the Carolina Pride Budweiser 250.
Don't go. We've got more activities here from Myrtle Beach, a top 5 rundown and another major interview, so don't go away. Action continues from Myrtle Beach, post-race activities.